and gentlemen, you are joining us for a very special episode of ATACS, Adults Talk About Cool Stuff. It is June 2nd, 2018, and we are here to talk about 2018's God of War. This is a spoiler cast, so as always, if you do not want to be spoiled on the game, then do not listen to this. This is your one and only upfront warning. This is no holds barred. We're going to talk about everything relating to Kratos, Atreus, and all the other happenings of God of War. And we played it, we finished it, we want to talk about it in all its gory detail, and that's exactly what we're going to do. This is a two-man show today. I am Flex from Raleigh, North Carolina, and joined by Mr. Nate from Clayton, North Carolina.
Heyo.
How's it going, Nate?
It's going fine.
So, important question.
Yeah.
Who is the God of War?
Well, I guess it's... This shouldn't have been so complicated. Is he still the God of War? Is Kratos still the God of War?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, they still refer to him as a god.
Yeah, they definitely still say he's a god.
Yeah, and I don't know what else he would be the god of.
Yeah, I just wonder if he's the god of anything since he killed his entire pantheon.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Maybe he's just a god without a pantheon now. Like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, it could be.
Not clear, I guess.
Yeah. Well, didn't mean to start this off with such a head scratcher.
Yeah, you wouldn't think that would be the hard part.
I thought you would just say Kratos and we'd move on.
Well, I'm sorry.
Jeez, thanks for mucking this up.
I don't even know who the traditional Norse God of War is. I feel like they refer to Tyr as the God of War.
They called Tyr the God of War in the game.
Yeah, so I guess that's the canon for this franchise, at least.
My entire knowledge of Norse mythology comes from this game and the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
So I could not tell you how accurate that is.
Yeah, and Hellblade a little bit.
Sure.
They say some Norse names in there. I don't.
Sure. I played Age of Mythology back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't remember if Tyr was in that game or not.
I don't remember what the Norse stuff was like in that game. I think I only played as the Greeks mostly.
Yeah, I think they had 3-ish gods per race, so they didn't get super detailed. It was just different hero abilities you got, and the Norse ones were, I know Odin and Thor were almost certainly two of them.
I'm sure you would have to think so.
Yeah. So I don't know what others there were, if any.
I just remember there being minotaurs and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the Norse side of that would be, like a frost troll maybe.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. Let's talk about Age of Mythology for a couple hours.
Yeah. All right. This is this is how we get people to listen to our Age of Mythology.
Yeah, actually, we're just going to talk about 90s strategy games.
Yeah, that I don't remember anything about.
That was still 90s, right?
I doubt it. That was probably early 2000s.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Because Age of Empires 2 was 99, and this game came after.
Yeah, you're totally right. Kratos.
Anyway, yeah, Kratos, God of War. Yeah, this is the 2018 God of War. Both of us have a good history with this franchise.
Yeah.
We've both played the original trilogy, God of Wars 1, 2, and 3. And I believe we also both played the first PSP game, Chains of Olympus.
Yes.
But I don't think either of us have played either the second PSP game, which was called Ghost of Sparta, maybe?
That sounds right.
And I don't think either of us played Ascension either.
No, definitely not. That first God of War is still really good.
Yeah, that's a really good game.
I guess I haven't played it in a few years, but I definitely got into a swing with that game a little bit after it came out where I played it a lot.
Yeah.
Just kind of over and over on the hard difficulty.
That's the only God of War game I've played twice. And I played it through on normal and then again on hard.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever the difficulties were called.
The second and third one's not so great, but they're fine.
Yeah. The second one I really liked gameplay-wise.
Yeah.
I actually thought it was a better God of War 1 gameplay-wise.
That's probably true.
It just felt refined. but the story in both 2 and 3 were just not great.
Yeah.
And I thought by the time the third one came around, I don't know if I had gotten tired of that style of combat, or if it just, the third one didn't evolve enough, or I don't know what. I just remember being kind of bored with the third one.
Yeah, for me, I remember the second one felt like a lot of just random filler, like, here's this guy, beat him up. Here's this guy, beat him up. And then the third one was like dramatic ending the video game.
Right. But
with a really long segment of like guiding a kid through some maze or something that was really long and dull.
I honestly couldn't tell you hardly anything from God of War 3.
It was Pandora. That was who you were. She was like a kid, or he or she, I'm not sure, was a kid, and you were guiding him through, and that apparently served as the template for this God of War.
Who knew?
Yeah.
But yeah, both of us really like the original.
Yes.
And I even think the original story was pretty good as well.
Yeah, it was good.
For as silly as 2 and 3 got.
Yeah.
And this new God of War is very story focused.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you like its story better than the original?
Ooh.
I'm all about the tough questions.
Yeah, so I like them for different reasons, I guess. The first one is just like a really focused revenge tale.
Yeah.
And it does that well.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I like parts of it a lot. I like the setup and the setting and the characters, and I like where it ends up overall. But yeah, some of the stuff along the way, it's kind of like rolling my eyes at every now and then.
Yeah, for the new one.
Yeah, for the new one.
Yeah, me as well. And I think there's some filler in the story.
Yeah, there's definitely filler. I think there's probably filler in all of the God of War games, but there's
probably
more of it in this one.
Yeah, all of them you do kind of like chase down a lot of MacGuffin.
Yeah. Here's a thing from mythology that we can insert.
Yeah, that you can go find and will in theory allow you to complete your goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do a lot of that.
Then you kill it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Usually it's you need this thing from this person that you have to kill.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's a body part of theirs for some reason.
Right. Yeah. You need a head or somebody's heart or whatever.
Their eyes.
Their eyes. Yep.
There's a lot of eyes.
Yeah. Eyes are a thing apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. It's a different paced story as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot more like, especially in the early hours. And I guess this is where we'll start with the beginning of the game. So, of course, the premise is a lot of time has passed. Kratos has moved on. He's living in Norse land, so we're dealing with Norse mythology.
Yep.
He has a new son with a new wife, and the wife is deceased.
Yep.
And your mission, as per her last dying wish, what is to spread her ashes from the highest peak in all the realms.
It's very important.
Yeah, it's a very important wording of that.
Yeah. Do they say in the start of the game? Because I don't remember. Do they say like that wording in all the realms?
I don't remember because I wasn't paying. I wasn't laser focused on the wording at the time. I would guess so. I would have to think they wouldn't spend 5 years making this game and not be particular with that wording.
Yeah, I would guess so. I had it in my head that the wording was the highest peak in the realm, but I bet that's wrong. I bet it's in all the realms.
I would bet money that it's in all the realms.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't, then that's extra dumb.
Yeah. Which we'll get to, I guess.
Yeah. But yeah, in the early goings, like you do see the burial of Kratos' wife, and her name is Faye, and his son is Atreus, and they set out together. And a lot of the early, like I don't know, maybe the first 5-10 hours, I don't know exactly what chunk, but I feel like that first third or so of the game is trying to get to the highest mountain in the realm you start in, which is Midgard.
Yeah, in Midgard.
And Yeah, and I feel like not a whole lot happens during those early hours. I think it's...
Not really.
The impression, tell me if this is the impression you got as well, is I got the impression that they were trying to set up the dynamic between Kratos and Atreus.
Yeah.
Which,
there's a lot of work done there to like show the player who Kratos is at this point and how he views the world and how he's kind of moved on from his past, and then also, of course, to introduce Atreus and see what his personality is like, which is definitely not like Kratos.
Yeah, he's almost the polar opposite.
Yeah, he's like cheerful and energetic and wants to help people, and is curious about the world. And then Kratos, of course, is just his brooding, gruff, grumpy old warrior.
Yeah, he's super like. I mean, pretty much through the whole game, but especially in the early hours, he just like. Yeah, it's just like constant scowl on his face, like barely says anything. And whenever he does say anything, it's usually just like slapping his kid down and telling him he's dumb for some reason.
Yeah, be better.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, telling him to be better or that he did something stupid, like we don't do that or something. And like often also offering no real explanation for why.
No, definitely not. He is not big on like giving reasons for why things should be done a certain way. It's just like, no, I'm just going to tell you to do this, and I expect you to do it.
Right. Yeah. That is Kratos' parenting style, 100%.
Yeah. It's not really teaching lessons through fables or anything like that.
No. And definitely not much like supportive. Like he doesn't ever have much like good job or you want to do this because this is how you survive, or like he doesn't have much like I'm trying to help you out kind of moments with Atreus.
Like I think you can see that he is trying to help Atreus grow into a man. Yeah. What Kratos views as a man, which is a whole bag of worms itself probably, but he does not communicate well.
No.
So I think that dynamic works. I think it sets up the characters really well.
And it also establishes the point that pretty sure they have not spent much time together.
Yeah.
Like they really only know each other because of Faye.
Yeah.
And they've both clearly spent a lot of time with Faye, but I don't think they've spent a lot of time with each other.
Yeah. And I do wish a little bit that we got somewhat of an explanation for why Kratos was such an absent father. He's in hiding. Like, that's his whole thing. He's in hiding from the gods. Like, he does not want to be found and does not want to deal with any shenanigans from the Norse mythology. And but what was he doing? Where was he?
Yeah.
Why was he not at home?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a great question.
And they never even touch on it.
Yeah. That's a good point. He's just like, I don't know, he just goes, finds a quiet spot in the forest and sits there and broods all day.
Yeah, that's almost what I imagine. I just can't deal with this family life. I'm just going to go stand in the woods and get snow on my head.
Yeah. Because I was about to say, maybe he was doing the, stereotypical man in the woods thing of he goes and does the hunting and provides or whatever. But I also got the sense that Faye and Atreus did a lot of food gathering and hunting as well. So
the one combat skill he has is that his mother trained him to hunt so he can shoot a bow. Yeah, so in which case I don't know why Kratos would have been the one doing all the hunting. So I have no idea what he was doing. Yeah. It's a very minor thing, but every time they brought up you were never here, I was like, where were you, Kratos?
Yeah. And I think the story, and this is very common in video games in general, but I think the story has a lot of unexplained minor things like that.
It does. But through the first bit of the game, it is mostly building out those characters and sort of exploring some of what Norse mythology looks like and some of the themes that keep coming back up. The one big event is that Baldur shows up, who serves as the main antagonist for the game.
Yeah,
shows up at their house early.
Yeah, he comes Yeah, that's kind of
This is
when
a
you
great
first.
scene.
It is a great scene. I didn't particularly like enjoy that fight, like
Yeah.
like playing it, but the scene itself as a spectacle is probably actually the most. Well, I guess the final fight with him is more um, ridiculous, but
It's more ridiculous, but I think the
that,
first meeting him is way more effective.
I think so as well because like because that's like I don't know 2 hours into the game or something.
Yeah, and
You
you
know,
haven't really left their home area at this point. You're just like, well, I guess we'll take her ashes up to find the highest mountain at some point. But they're like not
yeah,
imminently setting out or anything.
yeah,
And then this guy just shows up at their door and picks a fight with Kratos.
yeah. Everything's just been very quiet and somber and not much action, and then all of a sudden this dude shows up at his door and is like, you hiding something in there? And Kratos steps out and is like, no. And then, and then I forget who punches first, but, eventually someone throws a punch and all of a sudden it's on and they just have this insane anime style fight where they're just like flying around everywhere and flinging people through like giant rock formations and trees and whatever else.
And just like picking up boulders and throwing it and like smashing people against mountains. It's a great introduction for that character Balder and for just like giving them a real call to action, because as soon as that fight's over, Kratos is like, we need to go.
Yeah, we gotta go now. I also love that after that fight ends, Kratos is just like, it's where we get a sense that like, oh, this is old man Kratos now, because he's just like limping away from that fight, like breathing heavily, like holding his side and just like, oh, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, there are a couple times in that fight where like Balder is sort of relentless and he doesn't feel pain. That's one of his big things.
Yeah.
And he's just like zipping around a lot and taunting Kratos a lot. And there are a couple points in that fight scene where Kratos gets knocked around a little bit and then is like laying face down on the ground, and you just see this grimace on his face. He's like, God, I just got to get rid of this asshole.
Yeah. Like, I just don't want to deal with this guy.
Yeah, this is just not what I wanted to do today.
Yeah. Not what I thought when I was, making my eggs this morning. Yeah. And then, like you said, he gets back and he's like, all right, we got to go.
Yeah.
And that is the call to action.
Yeah.
And then you set out and fight a whole bunch of monsters. I don't know that they ever explain like why there are all these monsters around.
There's definitely some implications about the larger like mythology and like why there are no people around and why there are monsters, but I don't think they give a clear reason.
Right.
Like you definitely get a sense from them talking, and I guess from some of the other characters. I can't remember specific lines or anything, but it was definitely, I had a sense early on of like, oh, the gods just kind of like abandoned Midgard and like now it's all dead and there are monsters.
Right.
Like that was the sense I got.
Okay. Yeah, it seemed like an odd thing to me because not only are there just all these monsters everywhere.
Yeah.
But then, there are like no people living anywhere either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's totally empty except for demons and a couple dwarves.
Yeah. Which, yeah. Yeah, and I'm trying to think if anything else noteworthy happens between that Balder fight and when you meet Freya.
I don't really remember specifically when you meet Freya. I think that's before you go to Alfheim.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure she teaches you how to do that.
Yeah, I think that's right. So you're
it,
starting to climb the mountain, then you hit a roadblock, and then you have to go find something, and yada yada. The game does that like 6 times.
Yeah, this game has a whole lot of like, oh, you need some ability to get through this, artificial lock.
And so Freya gives you at least one of those things. You have to go to Alfheim for at least one of those things.
Yeah.
But Freya is a big character for sure. Yeah.
So she's one of the first major characters you meet, and she's first identified as the witch in the woods.
Right.
You learn the names
right away. I'm not sure. No, Kratos doesn't know she's a god, but she knows he's a god.
Yeah, she can obviously tell.
Yeah.
And Yeah, you eventually learn that she is a god, and she used to be married to Odin, right?
Yeah.
And Balder is her son.
Yes.
Which becomes very important later, as we'll get to.
Yep.
But for now, yeah, Freya clearly identifies you're a god, and Kratos hates all gods.
Yeah.
He's just like, and that's a constant lesson he teaches Atreus is like, do not trust gods. Gods are bad.
Yeah.
And Kratos himself does not know, or Atreus himself does not know that Kratos is a god.
Yeah. So there's definitely there's a lot of intertwining of plot and characters throughout this thing. Like you can sort of see the strings that they're going to pull later.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, it's definitely going to be a thing when Atreus finds out that Kratos is a god. It's definitely going to be a thing when we find out that Balder is Freya's son. That's definitely going to be a thing at some point.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of, and this is a point I'm going to bring up again later, but this game is very family oriented.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a whole lot of who's a god and who is whoever else's wife, husband, son, daughter, mother, father.
Yeah,
it's a whole lot about those dynamics.
Yeah, all that stuff really matters.
Yeah. But yeah, you meet Freya and you help her save a boar you shot. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Who was also some special being.
Yeah.
But Freya lives under a tortera turtle with a tree on his back.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, he's a good turtle. I like that turtle.
Yeah.
He probably gets pretty tired of her constantly making him stand up so she can go in her house.
Yeah, it seems really inefficient.
Yeah, it's well, I got to go out for some herbs or get some food. Yeah. I guess I got to make this giant turtle stand up.
Yeah, I just want to go walk, my morning walk. Sorry, bud. Yeah, but you meet her, and yeah, she helps you get figure out your way to Alfheim.
Mm-hmm.
Which to do that, so kind of this game is kind of open world.
Yeah.
You definitely have some areas to explore around, and most of those center around what's called the Lake of the Nine, which is in the middle of Midgard.
And referring to the 9 realms.
Yes. Is Midgard one of the 9?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there are 8 gates.
Okay. And is Asgard one of the 9? I forget.
Yeah, Asgard is one, and then there are 6 that you can go to in game, including Midgard. Okay. Asgard is one of the ones you can't go to.
Gotcha. Yeah, and in the center of this lake is basically this portal that you can use to get to the other realm.
Yeah.
And scattered around the edges of the lake are a lot of side area spots.
Yeah, you can just kind of sail around and find little docks and shores to dock on and find side quests, or just oh, here's a little puzzle I can do to open a chest, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. When I first got to the lake, I actually spent a good amount of time wandering the edges of the lake, because I think at that point you hadn't gotten any of the abilities that you needed to access new areas. So in my mind, I'm oh, this is an action game. You don't I'm not going to go see anything that I can't access yet, right?
Yeah, and that's 100% not the case.
Yeah, because I don't think any of the previous God of War games had that kind of game.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, and I spent a good amount of time exploring the edges of that entire lake, and you can probably only access maybe half of that stuff at most.
Yeah, maybe. But I did the same thing, and that is where it feels like the game starts to mechanically open up, because for most of the tutorial before you get to the lake, you're not really getting a bunch of new equipment.
No, I don't think you're really getting any new equipment.
You may not. Yeah, you may not get anything really until you get to the lake, and then suddenly it's well, I can go do all this side stuff and find all this great stuff that makes me better. Mm-hmm. And that's where it starts to unfold its RPG mechanics and customization and stuff like that. And so at that beginning, and I was interested in the world and wanted to see more of it. So I spent a ton of time doing side stuff right then, and had a really good time with that for that period.
Yeah. I think they could have, after I explored that lake, I found myself wishing they had gotten to that stuff sooner, because
Yeah, definitely.
that had to be at least a half dozen hours to get to that lake, maybe even more.
Yeah, I would say probably around 5 or 6 hours, maybe a little more.
Yeah, and like the combat, because like we already said, you didn't get any new abilities, new weapons, like
Yeah,
skill tree and like the armor system, like you really happening, like there really wasn't much to engage with on all of that yet.
yeah,
So like that's 5 or 6 hours of at least of very basic, straightforward combat.
yeah.
Which, when you think about the previous God of War games
It's like
being like
almost the length of those.
yeah, like being 8 to 10 hours in their entirety, that's like, all right, you're taking like the most base level of combat
Yeah,
in this game and doing it for like, 3/4 the length of a previous God of War game.
Yep.
Um, so like when you got to the lake and you're like, okay, like now I see how big this game is. Why could they have not ramped up to this quicker?
Yeah, I agree.
So that was kind of one of the first moments where it was simultaneously, like you said, of like, oh, I'm glad I'm getting to see all this other stuff, and
Yeah.
then think, oh, why didn't this happen quicker?
Yeah,
Because those first, I don't know, half dozen hours, I think were a little slow and dull.
for sure.
But yeah, when you do get to the lake, things start happening. You go up to the mountain, so you need something. You come back, you figure out the teleportation system to go to Alfheim, and in the process, you meet the dwarves.
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly where they come in, but
Yeah, I feel like you
sometime
had to
around
meet
then.
them before you went to Alfheim.
Yeah, definitely.
But they're like the game's primary comic relief, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Um,
The brothers Brock and Sindri, and they are. I think they're genuinely funny.
oh yeah, I do too. I like them both a lot.
Yeah.
Most people seem to like Brock more. I think I found Sindri more
Yeah.
amusing.
I think Sindri made me like outwardly laugh more often.
Yeah. He's just like this huge germaphobe.
He's a germaphobe. He's like super wimpy seeming and
Yeah.
like afraid of everything and like
Yeah. So just
he's just got this really timid mannerisms.
yeah, it's specifically his interactions with Kratos that crack me up.
Yeah.
Because Kratos is, of course, just basically it's just like the way Kratos would just stare at him grumpily like he does.
Mm-hmm.
And Sindri is just like super intimidated and squeamish about the whole situation.
And he's a smith, so like he wants to upgrade your cool axe and like help you out, but then like when he goes to like actually take the axe from Kratos he just like very delicately picks it up in his fingers and like waddles over to his station and like muttering under his breath like, oh, it's covered in blood. Oh
yeah, he's just like borderline vomiting the whole time. He's great. And I guess Brock's real shtick is he's just a big potty mouth.
He's a big potty mouth. He's really vulgar.
Yeah, but in an amusing way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they run the shops of the game, so they're where you do all your weapon crafting and upgrading and enchanting and all of that business. So you interact with them very regularly.
Mm-hmm. They just pop up everywhere.
Yeah, and like I don't know if they have any powers or if this is just supposed to be a suspension of disbelief thing, but be like you can like fast travel somewhere or like go through realms or whatever, and like their shops are just scattered everywhere and they're always there. Yeah,
they have some like throwaway lines of like, oh yeah, we can just walk between realms. You guys can't do that. Sucks for you.
Okay, I didn't remember that line.
Yeah, because there's one point where like you get into like a big fight somewhere, and then when you like Kratos is just like hacking this troll's face off at the end of the fight. And then, and then, like the camera pans over, and Sindri's just standing there, and he's like, "Whoa!"
Yeah,
he's like, "I didn't mean to walk into this."
Yeah,
they just like pop up wherever you are.
Yeah, they just kind of seem to always show up, and it's hilarious because it's like, who are they? I mean, I guess they serve the gods a lot because they made the axe you have, and they also made Thor's hammer in this game's mythology.
Yeah. And they talk about in the late game, I forget exactly what it was, but they talk about how Odin tried to get them to build something important that I'm blanking on now. But yeah.
I guess what I was saying is it doesn't seem like they'd get a whole lot of business
Yeah, I guess not.
Seeing that like nobody lives in the Norse lands other than the gods, apparently.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
They're
Cool.
they're cool. Atreus chats with them a lot.
Yeah, they have some good back and forth for sure.
Yeah, in which that's how you end up hearing a lot about their story, is because Atreus will talk to them and like extract stuff. You almost get the sense that Atreus is actually like happy to have someone to talk to.
Yeah,
Because he
this
certainly
guy
can't
won't talk to
with
me.
his dad.
Yeah,
Because Kratos is not going to engage in any kind of conversation.
yeah. And then sometimes when you're like sailing around, Atreus will be like, "Tell me a story," and Kratos is like, there was a man. He fought a great battle, and it was good."
Yeah.
And Atreus is like, "Oh, brother."
Yeah. Kratos says like, yeah, we kind of mentioned it briefly up top, but he is like super sweet, like very like personable and very enthusiastic and curious about the world.
Yeah.
And constantly asking questions, like constantly wanting to engage with things. He doesn't know he's a god until later. Because he doesn't know Kratos is a god, but he very clearly has like a knack for nature and communicating with things and animals and stuff.
Yeah, he can sort of communicate through feeling almost with animals. And then he also just has a natural tendency to like learn language really well.
Yeah. So he seems to just have a way of communicating with all living things, be they people, animals, like almost even seems like the world itself.
Yeah, for sure. So he like hears random voices when you're in a like important place, things like that.
Yeah. So he gets along with all the characters in the game pretty well, and he's often seems excited to meet new people because someone to actually talk to.
Yeah.
He also really likes. I think you meet the World Serpent.
Yeah, it's
also around this time.
Here, yeah.
Whose name I'm not going to try and pronounce.
No, like definitely not.
Jormungandr.
Yep, that was close enough.
Yeah, but he's just like giant serpent who's like sleeping around the lake.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
who is actually a giant, which is like a race in this mythology.
Right. Yeah.
But they're not all giant snake people.
Right. They're not all even giant.
No.
Yeah. But the World Serpent's voice is awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Whenever he pops up and talks, I got very excited.
Yeah, he's just like, oh,
and like it has like a really cool vibration to it. So like you can feel like the intensity of it.
Yeah. And he first pops up, and of course, if you've played a God of War game before, you're like, oh, this is some absurd thing I'm going to have to fight.
Yeah, you're going to fight this for sure.
Yeah. And then
you don't ever actually fight it.
Yeah, Atreus is just like, no, he's cool, he's chill. Like Kratos, like I think Kratos actually like reaches for his axe or something when it first pops up.
I think he just has it out, and if this had been a God of War game where Atreus was not there, this probably would have been a boss fight.
Probably would have, yeah. Oh man, yeah.
So yeah, there are definitely a lot of character introductions during this sequence of the game where you're meeting Freya, the Witch of the Wood, and the dwarves, and the World Serpent, and learning more about Balder and the other gods.
Yeah, I mean this is really where you kind of get a lot of the info dump in this period.
Yeah.
Because that's most of the characters in the game right there. And I mean, really a lot happens when you get to the lake. Like, narratively, you get introduced to all these characters. You learn more about how the world works. And then mechanically, like we said, that's when you really start seeing like how that there are ability gates in the world, and you start getting introduced to like a lot of the upgrade systems and armor and that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like a lot of that stuff. I like a lot of those characters. I liked getting into the open world area for the first time and like seeing some of the RPG mechanics, at least on the customization side, come out. I'm still like 100% against the leveling system in this game, but
do you want to talk about that now or later?
I mean, I can talk about it. We can talk about it briefly, but I
I
feel like
mean, if we're going
I've
to talk
already.
about it, we don't need to short circuit it. We'll just talk about it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I guess we might as well, because I am 100% with you in hating the gear leveling in this game.
Yeah. So you have your axe, which also has a pommel. There's two separate pieces of equipment that you can switch out.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you can't switch out the axe, but you upgrade it.
Yeah, you have the axe, which you can upgrade, and the axe has 2 runic attacks in it, a light and a heavy.
Yep.
It also has a pommel. So the axe basically has 3 equipable pieces to it.
Yeah. And the runic attacks give you a special ability, which I'm A-okay with that.
Yeah.
I like the runic attacks. The pommel seemed like just a stat boost.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then you have like 3 or 4 pieces of armor, including a talisman that you can.
Yeah, it's three quote unquote armors, like chest, legs, and bracers or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then you have the talisman.
Right, and the talisman is also an ability that you actively use.
Yes, similar to the runic attacks.
Similar to the runic attacks. Well, usually I guess sometimes they're like a passive effect.
Yeah, sometimes they can be passive. And all of the armor pieces, including the talisman, you can equip enchantments into potentially.
Yeah, once they get to high enough level, basically.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they give stat boosts, which I don't have the stat list in front of me, but it's like strength, vitality, endurance. I don't even remember, but luck is
there's
one
like
of them.
6 stats. There's a runic stat. There's
runic cooldown,
luck.
Yeah, I think there are like 2 defense stats.
There's one that's called defense. But
I think there's defense and vitality.
Yes, which I think is health.
Yeah, which is health. And then strength, which is your damage dealt. Runic is how powerful your runic attacks are. Cooldown is shorter cooldowns, the higher that stat is.
Because all your runic attacks have cooldown.
Yeah, and then luck, I still don't know. I think it's just like when things say they have a small chance to do something, that probably affects that.
I think it also gave you more experience and hack silver in drops.
Okay, that makes sense.
So for what that's worth.
So I already didn't like those stats.
It just doesn't seem necessary.
They're not necessary, and it just ends up being the standard thing that so many RPGs do of like, look at our deep RPG system. You get to choose whether you want the armor that has higher strength or higher cooldown.
Yeah.
Look at that. And I'm like, I just don't care about plus 10 to a stat that I don't quite understand the effects of. I just don't care.
Yeah, I didn't care either. I basically just, it's like, all right, what gives me the highest like combined strength defense?
Right.
I'll just pick that, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
I didn't use my runic attacks. I never used my runic attacks enough where the cooldown was ever a problem.
Right.
Which also meant the runic stat was never a problem. I had way more experience points than I could ever spend, so who needs more luck? Same with money. I never ran out of experience points or money.
Yeah. So it's just such a needless fiddly system, and I'm sure there are people who enjoy that system, but I just do not care.
And what's really frustrating about it, and by the end of the game, I'm fully convinced this was the purpose of the system. Of all of this in total, the whole purpose of it was not for those actual stat numbers, but all of these things you equip contribute to an overall equipment level for Kratos.
Oh, God, see, the stats, like I felt like I safely ignored the whole game.
Yeah, me too.
It wasn't a problem.
Yeah, those stats really don't make a big difference.
But the equipment level stat just infuriated me anytime I realized it was there, because the game said, "Oh no, your level's too low. Like, you better go grind or like do some side stuff before you come back to this challenge."
It's infuriating because it's 100% artificial.
Yeah, it is. It's so artificial.
Yeah, so and you don't level up this equipment level much throughout the game. Like, I finished the game barely having hit level 7.
Yeah.
I think the highest level thing in the game is, the highest level Valkyrie, from talking to other people I know who've played, is level 9.
Okay.
So I think that's the scale of the game, is basically 1 to 9.
Yeah.
And what it does is basically if something is it 2 or 3 levels higher than you, that you can't hurt them. Or basically there's, I think it's 3 levels higher than you, but there's a threshold where if something is enough equipment levels higher than you, then it artificially makes them basically impossible to beat.
Yeah, it's like you basically deal no damage. Like you can see a little bit of damage on their health bar if you hit them enough times, but it's like essentially no damage. And they'll always one-shot you with anything.
Yeah, they will always one-shot you, and you cannot block.
And they'll go through blocks even with normal attacks that normally wouldn't go through blocks.
Right. And the reason it's artificial is because, like, if you just equipped enough gear to make you go up one more equipment level, that might be like, I don't know, a 10 or 20% increase in your, like, strength and defense stats. Yeah, but it makes for this huge swing of like, oh, now you're not getting one shot anymore. You're only like losing 1/10 of your health per hit. Like,
right.
The percentages
don't do significant damage to them, even though your strength stat didn't change.
Yeah, like you can your strength stat cannot. You could bump up that stat by just bumping up luck. You could bump up your equipment level, and then all of a sudden you're dealing way more damage, like unproportionally huge increase of damage dealt.
Like I guarantee it's possible to go up against an enemy that's enough higher level than you that you can't basically do anything to it, and then change your equipment around so that your strength is actually like the same or lower, and then suddenly be able to damage it.
Yeah,
I guarantee. So insane.
Yeah, I would totally, based on the way what I've seen of how that stuff works, I would totally suspect that you could switch your equipment to have a lower strength but a higher equipment level and deal more damage, which makes no sense because you have lower strength.
Yeah.
Because somehow that equipment level like just artificially inflates. Like it just seems to apply like just a hard stat boost to the enemies or stat reduction to you if they're higher than you.
Yeah. So I didn't like the 6 stats when I first saw them, but I was like, I'll just ignore those, and you can. But then this leveling thing simultaneously completely invalidates that whole stat system and ends up just like roping you off from fights that there's no reason to rope you off from.
Yeah. Yeah, and my first experience with that in the game is when I was exploring the lake for the first time, I was like level 2 or 3, and one of the many collectibles / side things in the game are these realm tears.
Yep.
You walk up to, they're just these purple fuzzy things, and you stick your hand in them, and oftentimes enemies will come out, and encountered enemies that were like 3 or 4 levels higher than me, and they just one-shotted me, and I dodged and hit them a few times and dealt like no damage.
And they're the same exact enemy types that you had been fighting the whole game up to that point. And then you get to this lake and try to do the side content fight, and it's like, no, you're a bad Kratos. You suck. You can't fight these enemies that you've been tearing apart for 5 hours now, because these are the good enemies.
Yeah. Now I really want a game. Now I really want a game called Bad Kratos.
Yeah, this is bad Kratos.
Yeah, it's silly, because if you think of like how many action games, because like this is predominantly an action game still. And how many other action games that have gear can you think of? Like, I mean, the easy example is Dark Souls, where like, sure, like you're worse if you don't ever upgrade your gear, but the game is still beatable because it's an action game.
Right. Yeah. People do completely like naked runs with an unupgraded club in Dark Souls.
Yeah. It's like, if you're good enough at the game, you're like, sure, why not? But like, this game,
you theoretically could do that in this game and like never upgrade anything or swap out any equipment, but I think it would be pretty close to impossible.
Yeah, I mean, like every fight would be like 20 minutes, like to kill one person, because they just have so much health. Like you're just not dealing damage. So like it's basically the game just like blocking off fights that are too high level for you. Like it's not that they're just harder. But if you're good enough, you can still do it. The game is just artificially locking it off, basically.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating for an action game.
Yeah, it was super frustrating.
Or even like think of like a Final Fantasy game. Like if you like avoid as many random encounters as you could in like a JRPG, you'll be really underleveled, but it's still beatable.
Usually, yeah.
it'll be hard, obviously,
Yeah.
but like it's not artificially so. It's just hard because your stats are worse than theirs.
Right.
Not because they like flipped a switch and now you can't block them.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't understand that decision. I don't get it. I don't know what that adds to the game. I don't know why this random encounter on the side of the lake needs to be level 7.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
Yeah. And a lot of that gating in general kind of bothered me because the game world is very explicitly set up for you to go back and forth and to see this thing you can't reach and be like, oh, come back later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not done in the like Metroid way where things loop back in on themselves and you're like exploring and filling out a world. It's like, no, this is just a hub.
Yeah, like you come back to the lake, but you're never going to go back to that shore for any reason other than to go back and open the chest that you saw 10 hours ago.
Exactly, yeah. You're not like going to, like you would in a Metroid or even a Dark Souls, like you're not going to unlock a shortcut that like circles back around and makes the world connect in cool ways. It's like, nope, you're just going to go back to the lake and go back to that one shore specifically because now you have the ability that lets you get through the brambles.
Yeah, and in fact, this game is like actively antagonistic to the idea of shortcuts.
Yeah.
Like to get anywhere is such a long process and they don't give you fast travel until the very, very, very end of the game.
Oh boy.
And the fast travel is incredibly slow.
Yeah, the leveling stuff is really supremely annoying. I almost might find your maneuverability around this world to be more frustrating though, because like you're gonna get gear that's gonna level you up.
You will, yeah.
But your travel speed through this world is just always terrible.
Yeah.
Like there's no way around it, and like the fast traveling helps if you're like going from end to end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're like, if you need to go like if you went to like if you need to go like from one side of the lake to the like if you're a few minutes away from the shore and you just need to get back to the shore and go go dock at another shore on the other side of the lake, like
it's almost faster to do that than to use
it's almost faster
travel system.
Yeah, and it's not fast to just walk there.
No, it's
there.
not. So yeah, all of those things, those mechanical things of like maneuverability around the world and the way the leveling system works and the way they gate off so many things at every physical location of the game, it seems like there's something that you would have to come back to at the end game to open. Like all of that stuff came together for me where like after that initial like enjoyable exploration phase I had when first reaching the lake, like I just ended up not doing any more of it after that.
Yeah. So I did do some stuff near the very end. So at some point, this is jumping a little bit ahead, but at some point the water lowers in the lake.
Yep.
And that opens up like another round of stuff. And I actually didn't explore anymore then because by that point in the game, I had realized that there were abilities you get that gated stuff.
Yep. So you just want to get all the abilities, right?
Exactly. So my second round of exploration came after I was confident I had all the abilities.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Which the abilities really, I guess, just amount to Atreus gets 2 special kind of arrows.
Yeah, 2 different types of arrows that can open things.
Mm-hmm. And then Kratos gets a new weapon, which we'll get into in very story detail later.
Yeah.
That allows him to burn the brambles.
Yeah.
And were there any other like ability gate style thing?
The mirror thing, you get a pick that lets you open those mirrors.
Yeah, the magic chisel.
That might be it. Oh, the what is it called? Hell's Winds things.
I don't remember this at all. Oh, right, yes.
Yeah,
I mean, there's like these little wind orbs, and you throw your blades at them and absorb the wind.
Yeah.
That thing can be kind of frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, it actually could be.
Because it's usually just like look around the room for the thing that they usually hide in really obnoxious places.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it never made me feel that clever of like, oh, I solved the puzzle. It's like, no, you just got to pixel hunt the room for this orb.
Yeah. There's a fair
amount
what
to do. You just got to find it.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, like there weren't even, it's like they leaned really hard into that gating, but there weren't even that many abilities to make it like an interesting progression.
Right, yeah, it's not interesting, especially in the cases of like, here's a chest with some brambles on it. Like, you'll just come back later and hit it, and then you'll open the chest. Like,
And you get some hack silver.
literally nothing interesting about that.
Yeah, it's silly.
Um,
Yeah, it's like, I feel like, and we talked about this on their podcast, but it does feel to me like they just tried to add in as many like gamey things that they thought were popular nowadays. And
yeah,
not all of it felt like it made sense for this game.
yeah. I mean, they clearly had a vision of this being like a very big, very in-depth, like high production prestige product, right?
Yeah.
So like I think they achieved that on some level, but it definitely feels like some of that stuff is just superfluous or in some cases I think actively detracts from the game.
Yeah. I think at best a lot of that stuff is just kind of meaningless filler, and at worst has really frustrating things like traversing the world or the gear system, the gear leveling system.
Right. So, I mean, all of that stuff aside, mechanically speaking, we should probably, I guess, get back to talking about like the story and characters. But how did you overall end up feeling about like the combat loop?
I liked it overall. Yeah. I won't say I like super loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Leviathan axe is the coolest thing.
Yeah, Leviathan axe is great.
Yeah,
the moveset is really satisfying. I think the skill tree upgrades are generally good.
Yeah,
I don't think they're all good for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of neutral on the skill tree because I feel like there's a lot of stuff in that skill tree, and I feel like maybe a third of it I actually found useful.
Right.
Maybe so for full clarity, I played most of the game on normal, and I think you played it all on hard.
Yeah.
So maybe some of it's more useful on hard, but like, especially when I think about like the stance switching stuff, it's like, I just don't care.
I tried a couple times to like focus on trying to use the stance switching stuff, but it never felt like it gained me anything significant over just doing normal combos.
Right. And
like
even
it had a little bit of like crowd control aspect to it, because the way it works is you basically do an attack with your normal combo, and between any attacks you can pause for a second and he'll do like a little flex.
Yeah.
And then if you keep the combo going after that, then he'll like magically throw the axe and it'll like spin around him, and like it's a cool animation, and it like hits enemies on all sides, but it didn't feel powerful enough for me to ever think about it in the moment.
Yeah, I think that's where I came down, is it felt like in the skill trees you could unlock a bunch of different moves, but I never got the feeling that anything was really any better than anything else.
Yeah.
So it was just like more moves for the sake of more moves.
Right. I mean, the stuff that I definitely used was like any of the dashing moves. Like if you're sprinting, you can attack out of that with either light or heavy, and those are really cool. Some of the moves that you get when you are dodging, so you get moves for dodging both forwards and backwards, and can do an attack out of that. Those are really useful.
I agree with those.
The shield parries for both melee and ranged attacks are super useful.
Yes.
So yeah, like some of those are like critical.
Those ones are good. Those ones are all new functionality, like doing a move while running or while dodging or while blocking. Like those are useful, but whenever it was just like, here's new combos, I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the stances were.
The stances were that. I don't think many of them were like that. Some of them were like hold down the button to do a different combo instead of mashing it.
Yeah, those I pretty much never used.
I used the barehanded one a lot because it does a ton of stamina damage. Or stun damage, I guess it's called. So if you're unarmed and you're holding down light attack, he like punches them once and then does like a spin with the shield and like takes their legs out from under them. And it does a ton of stun damage.
Yeah, I didn't use that one a lot. I obviously didn't even remember it.
And then the holding down heavy with the axe to do the overhead cleave was also really useful.
I did do that a lot, though. I also, I would say the majority of the hits I took in the game were while I was trying to do that.
Yeah, you had to feel out the timing on that one.
Yeah, which towards the end of the game, I started thinking, like, the animation on this is so long, is it really actually worth doing, or could I do just as much damage by mashing normal attacks during that time frame?
Right.
And that's kind of what I was saying with, like, none of the other, like, a lot of the other moves just didn't feel that worthwhile, because, like, I could not definitively say that anything you do in that game does more damage than just mashing light attack forever.
That's probably true.
Like, when you think about damage over time.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
but
I
you're
think
also
some of the,
like weirdly vulnerable while you're doing that.
What, mashing light attack?
Yeah.
You're kind of vulnerable whatever you're doing.
That's true. But like most enemies don't get staggered by your attacks at all.
Right.
So if you're just kind of flailing away, I found myself, that's when I was usually getting hit, was when I was just like mashing attacks.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I also you were probably in this boat too. By the end of the game, I had every skill unlocked.
Yeah.
Well, except for the final level of the blades, because I didn't go do the challenges.
Yeah.
But I prioritized early on Atreus's tree for the bow.
Yep.
And he, like, by the end of the game, he could just murder everything for me.
Yeah, he's very powerful.
Yeah, he's extremely powerful. So, like, if I needed something to chill out, I would just, like, launch a volley of, like, the electric arrows at them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're stunned, and then I could wail on them or wail on someone else while he's stunned. Like, that was kind of my crowd control, I guess.
Yeah.
I
think I like the flow of the normal combat where you're like dodging around and like chucking your axe and hitting somebody in the face, and then it bounces off their face and like flies back in your hand, and you do a cool spin and knock somebody else over. Like
I did a lot of axe throwing, and I really like throwing it at their feet to trip them, or like I would also like throw it at someone to freeze them and then start punching someone else.
Yep, I would do that a lot. Or if they're next to a wall, you throw it and freeze them, and then do a charging heavy unarmed attack.
Yeah,
and knock them into the wall and shatter them.
Yeah,
so like all that stuff's really satisfying.
Yeah, for sure. Like that was my favorite part of the combat, was like throwing the axe, having Atreus shoot at things, like punching something else. Like all of that stuff is great.
I also loved any combat encounter with lots of weaker enemies and a ledge to knock them off of.
Yep.
That's super satisfying.
Yeah. They're like standing heavy attack wall. I'm sorry?
You're just like standing against the hordes, like sending them all flying off a cliff.
Yeah. The standing heavy attack when you are unarmed is just like this kick.
Mm-hmm.
This like 300 style, this is Sparta kick.
Yeah, 100%.
So you could totally
use people off a ledge.
Yeah, you totally just kick people off ledges with that, which is great.
Yeah.
I did that a lot in one of the few moose. I need to learn how to actually pronounce this.
I think it's Muspelheim.
All right. In one of the few Muspelheim challenges I did, where they like regenerated health amazingly quickly.
Yeah.
So it was hard to actually kill them by dealing normal damage, but there were ledges around. I just like stayed near the ledges and tried to corral them and just kept kicking them off.
Yep.
Which is pretty good.
Yep. I used the light runic attack. I think it was called Leviathan's Wake for most of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which is where, I don't know if you ever used this one, but it slows down for a second and you can aim, and he does like a heavy throw of the axe.
No, I didn't use that one really much at all.
And it sends them.
Was it a light or a heavy one?
It was a light one.
The main light one I used was like a cyclone whirlwind thing.
Okay, yeah. But I always used that when there were a lot of enemies because it just sends the axe forward in a line.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever you want to throw it, and it'll go through guys, and it just knocks them really far back.
Yeah.
So you can just knock a ton of guys off the ledge.
Yeah. I think what I wish because I think a lot of especially the axe, like to me, the axe throwing is kind of what makes the combat.
Yeah.
And it's what makes it unique, because otherwise it's just kind of honestly fairly standardish kind of thing, if we're being real here.
Yeah, like I think it's done well. I think it has like a lot of weight to it, and like the moves are kind of fun.
Yeah. But I don't think
I agree. The axe throwing is what makes it like distinct.
Yeah. And I think that stuff's fun to use. I think the main thing I wish I had gotten from the combat is I wish the dodging and or blocking felt snappier.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think both of those maneuvers felt, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like neither of them felt as responsive as I wanted to. It felt like you couldn't just like last split second like press block or dodge and you would get out of it. It's like it's not quite the level of like twitchiness I would want for those kind of actions.
Yeah.
There's a lot of animation in those actions that made them feel sluggish.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when I think of the old God of War games where those actions were very responsive.
Yeah, you're in the original trilogy for sure. Like your defensive options were super powerful.
Yes, like you could dodge roll and block things like in a fraction of a second.
Yeah, but they're definitely not as powerful here. And I think it's probably a feel thing that they were going for with this one, of it being like the game feels a lot more weighty, and like you have to think about like positioning more and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think you did have to think about positioning a lot in the older games.
Oh yeah.
I get what you're saying is you don't want to get surrounded in this game.
Yeah, definitely not.
Whereas if you did get surrounded in the old ones, you had ways to get out of it.
For sure.
And I guess it made it feel slightly less. The action felt a little less snappy in this game.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can be clear about it. It sounds like you're probably in agreement with this. I know I feel this way, is that like the first God of War and the second one, and I guess probably the third one, although I don't remember its combat model super well, definitely are like better action games than this is an action game.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed the action in the original game more than this one.
This one does its own thing, and it's different, and it's still good. But I think as a like action game first, those are definitely my preference.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think part of it also comes from this game's just so much longer.
Yeah, it's harder to be in love with it because it just keeps going.
Yeah, by the end of like when I started doing those Muspelheim challenges at the end of the game, I was just like, I have fought so many of these things already. And it's like, I just don't need to fight any more of them. Like, I'm just so over it.
Yep.
Where, like, I don't actually know that this game had, like, I don't know, comparing this game to the original, which had more enemy variety, but by virtue of being a much longer game, I was way more tired of the enemies by the end of this game.
I think they're probably about comparable in the
I think so too.
Enemy variety.
Yeah, it's just the first game does it over 10 hours. This one does it over 30 plus.
Yeah, which is a big difference.
Yeah, that's a huge difference. Yeah, you're spending at least 3 times as long with each of these enemy types.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I did. Like, I do think the action in this game is good.
Mm-hmm.
I might even say it's one of its stronger aspects.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed engaging with it. But yeah, there are other action games I like better, including the original God of War for the action.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think throwing that axe is real fun, and
throwing the axe is so much fun.
And this game definitely has some cool stuff in its combat model that I like a lot. But yeah, it has just enough little things that you're like,
Yeah,
I could see other action games being the preference here.
Yeah, and throwing the axe was one of my favorite things in combat.
Yeah,
it was also one of my favorite things about exploring the world is just like throwing your axe at random stuff.
Yeah, and they come up with a lot of the same types of puzzles show up over and over. But for those first like 10 hours, it feels like, man, they're really getting inventive with like making me throw my axe at stuff.
Yeah, like Yeah, for as much as I guess, kind of griped about like the nature of exploring the world with the ability gates,
Yeah.
some of the combat getting repetitive and like all that stuff. It's like I think they do actually a really good job at coming up with like ways to interact with the environment using the axe.
Yeah. So you would not think you could use like throwing an axe at things to solve that many different types of problems,
Yeah.
but you totally can.
Yeah, like all Kratos needs is that axe, and he can get through anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do a good job at like indicating when you can use the axe for something. They kind of have this one symbol that's kind of hard to verbalize, but it's like you know it when you see it.
Yeah, there's good visual indication around a lot of the design of this game. Like anything you can climb is yellow, and
yeah,
that's not unique to this game. A lot of games do that.
Oh my gosh, the climbing is so infuriating. It's so slow.
It is very slow.
Like I kept like if I'm climbing straight up a wall, I like wanted to like just mash circle to keep jumping up like you would in the original God of War games.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, he's not going to do it. You're just like slowly lumbering your way up.
He's too old for that. He's not going to do it anymore.
He's not fast and agile anymore. Yeah. Yeah, that axe is great. I would also just regularly like you're like on a cliff face, just like
toss
hurl the axe out into nothingness.
Yeah.
And then just like go wander on, and then like 10 minutes later press triangle and like like watch as it takes like 10 full seconds for it to like find its way back to you.
It's like, you guys wait, and when it gets here, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that.
Yeah.
Before we move on, let's take a quick break.
Sure.
We are going to wrap up the spoiler cast, talk about the back half of the story where most of the important stuff happens. But we are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. And we are back to our God of War spoiler cast. I am Flex, joined by Nate, and we are going to trudge forward and talk about the remaining of the happenings of God of War 2018. We've kind of laid the groundwork, talked about a lot of the characters, a lot of the stuff you see up until you go to Alfheim. And talked about all of how we love the equipment leveling so much.
It's great. I hope every game does that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems
I shouldn't say it. I feel like I just willed that into existence, and
yeah,
now I feel bad.
I would not be surprised if because it's kind of the Destiny system, right?
It is, which was kind of an MMO system.
Yeah.
So,
and not only are we getting that in a lot of things now, we're also getting the Destiny style like cursor.
Yeah.
Which this game also has.
Yep.
Which I think is incredibly stupid.
It's pretty weird. I don't know why that thing took off.
I just think it's so much more inefficient than just using a D-pad to button through menus.
Like, I don't think I like it more or less. I just don't understand why it's a thing that took off. Like, I just
feel like it moves so slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand why it took off either. I don't know. My best guess is it's some weird UI thing that works better for people who grew up on phones.
Maybe that's it. Maybe.
I mean, I don't understand the like psychology behind it, but I figure it has to do something with like people who have grown up with different technology.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, that speculation aside, I feel like Alfheim is where the story like actually starts ramping up.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there are definitely still plenty of levels to go through, but
sure, yeah.
But
I feel like that's when things actually start like kind of. I feel like until Alfheim, like not really anything's happened.
Yeah, and this is where the scope starts to broaden out. You visit a different realm other than Midgard.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of you get like a bunch of new types of an enemy you hadn't seen before, which, by the way, the elves are super annoying.
Yeah, they're probably my least favorite enemy to fight in that game.
I really disliked fighting them.
Yeah, especially like the big ones that constantly dodge.
They just constantly dodge away and block everything, and then try to give you smoke screen vision.
Yeah,
that's all they do. It's really annoying.
Yeah, it's really silly. But yeah, you go there because you're trying to get some MacGuffin.
Yeah. This is the first time you get to see the really cool realm travel animation.
Yeah.
Which is really crazy time and space bending stuff going on.
Yeah,
they do that a few different ways across the game, not only through realm travel, but just a lot of really good visual effects of I don't know what's going on here, but it sure looks crazy.
Yeah. Which we should say, this game looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's probably, if not the best, it's one of, if not the best looking console game I've ever played.
Yeah.
But yeah, and those effects visually are just really cool.
Yeah. Alfheim itself is not super interesting.
Yeah, it looks pretty.
It looks pretty.
Yeah.
You fight a lot of elves, you find the MacGuffin, and then you go back.
Yeah. A lot of those annoying elves.
Yeah.
I really, and anytime they popped up later again in the game, or when I saw
what are you doing here?
Yeah,
go
it's
away.
Why I don't want to do this. But there was actually I think this was in Alfheim.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of Alfheim, one of my favorite story moments in the game, actually.
Is going into the light.
Yeah, when you go into the light to get the thing, and you would basically you would set off some alarm in this elf compound.
Yeah.
Basically. So these elves are just swarming all over you, and you finally get to the thing you want, and Kratos has to step into this weird portal of light. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all very ethereal and ambiguous.
Yeah.
But he steps in there, and you follow Kratos, and you basically you're in there maybe 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, not very long.
Not very long, and you see and hear some of Faye, your wife.
Yeah. And
Kratos
he's
is
trying to get to her.
Mm-hmm. And then you get the thing, and you get out, and when you get out, there's just all these corpses everywhere, elf corpses.
Yeah, well, Atreus pulls you out.
Yeah,
against Kratos' wishes, because he thinks he's gonna meet Faye in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
And so Atreus pulls him out, and he's screaming.
Yeah,
Kratos is this is probably the most outwardly emotional he is in the whole game.
Probably, yeah.
He's very upset, and not in just an angry way. He's clearly distraught.
Yeah.
And then he just comes out, and Atreus is dude, what are you doing? And all these dead elves.
Yeah, no, Atreus is just screaming at him. He's where were you? Why did you leave for so long? You don't even care.
Mm-hmm.
And you see all these dead elves around, and Kratos gets out, and it's Atreus has been fighting elves, a lot of them.
Yeah, for who knows how long.
Yeah, who knows how long. The game never explains how long.
Yeah, but it's made clear that it was a lot longer for Atreus than for Kratos.
Yeah, and Kratos is just he's kind of dumbfounded, and he's I was only out for a few minutes, but it's yeah. And Atreus makes all these things of remarks of you don't even care, or you always leave, or things like that.
Yep.
Kind of hinting more at he was an absent father. But I thought that was kind of a good moment to kind of drive home what their relationship was at that stage.
Yeah. That was a good scene for sure.
Yeah. And you get that, whatever, I don't even remember what the thing was, but you get the thing.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Yeah, and you go back, and I think from there you just do go to the mountain, right?
I think so. I think you go to the mountain and climb up old mining equipment, and it's a pretty long segment to get to the top of the mountain. Yeah,
for sure. And then you get up there, and you meet some new characters.
Yep.
Because you see old man Mimir attached to this tree.
I love Mimir.
Yeah. And what is like Balder and Magni and Modi? Is it all of it, or just I don't know?
It's at least Balder and somebody else because he's talking to them. But
Yeah,
at that point, I didn't have the frame of reference for who Magni and Modi were, so I didn't
same
internalize
here.
that.
Balder and his gang.
But I was just looking, and I might as well bring this up now before I forget. I was just looking at this wiki page for the God of War game that we're talking about, and I was just scrolling through randomly and saw that it lists the major voice actors in the cast, and I think it's hilarious that Magni is Troy Baker and Modi is Nolan North.
Yep. Did you not know that until just now?
I did not know that.
Oh wow, no, I knew that at the time, and I thought it was hilarious.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, because Magni and Modi, they're both sons of Thor. Is that right?
Yeah, Balder, Magni, and Modi are the sons of Thor.
Yeah, no, Balder is a son of Odin.
Oh, that's
so
right.
I think he's their uncle.
That's right. Yes, because they do call him uncle. I think at some point. Yeah, they're sons of Thor.
Yeah, and Thor is Balder's brother.
Yeah,
because they're both sons of Odin.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I mean everyone's related, but
yeah.
But yeah, Magni and Modi are like they're these two brothers that are just like borderline incompetent.
Yeah, they're like I can't think of a specific example off the top of my head, but they're like the knucklehead bully brothers from any like coming of age story movie who like just constantly just like both like try to torment the main characters, but then also like are bad at it.
Yeah, they're just not good at what they do. So yeah, they're hilarious. I like both of them a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And when I first saw that they were voiced by Troy Baker and Nolan North, I was like, that's too perfect.
Yeah, it's great. Anyway.
But anyway, so they're all basically bullying Mimir, trying to get some info from him. Because Mimir is supposedly like this all-knowing being or something.
He's just, he's like a scholar. He just knows a lot.
Yeah. And he won't tell them what they want. They leave. You go up there and you talk to Mimir because you want something from him too.
Yep.
And this is where I believe your favorite story twist happens.
Yeah, at the time it was very. I wasn't mad, but I was just like, "What are you doing, game? Like, I don't understand what you're trying to do here." Because the whole point of the game up to this point has been to take his mother's ashes, Atreus' mother's ashes, Faye, up to this mountain and spread them.
Yeah.
And like we said earlier, I'm betting that they were very specific about the language of her wanting to be spread from the highest mountain in all the realms. But they had
this is where the specificness of that wording is important.
Yeah, but they had decided that it was this mountain and that they had done all this work to get here.
Yeah.
And then they get up there and they're like, well, we came here because she wanted this and the highest mountain. And Mimir is just like, oh no, brothers, we want the other mountain.
Yeah, in his Scottish accent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like, oh, this is the highest mountain in Midgard, but the highest mountain is in Jotunheim.
And then Kratos says exactly what I was thinking at the time. I remember his exact quote was, "This cannot be what she meant." And I was like, yeah, it probably wasn't. Just spread the ashes here and go home.
Yeah, see, my whole thought process, this entire point, up to this point throughout the game, and even past this point really, was like, yes, I know you're trying to honor her wish.
Right.
But she's also dead.
Right. And you've done all this work to honor her wish in the way that you interpreted it. Yeah.
And if it's just to honor her wish, like you've already battled through like hordes and hordes of undead enemies that no normal person would ever survive against.
Right.
Like you've gone, if like how I would have interpreted her thing is like go through some ordeal to have some symbolic significance about spreading her ashes versus just spreading it at your house.
Right.
And like you've done a journey at this point, you've climbed a mountain, you've killed a million bad things. Mm-hmm. You're on a high up peak, like you could have your moment and honor her.
Yeah.
So like then to just like be like, oh no, like we have to do this 100% right. Like,
And yeah, it's
like
so
I guess I just don't know what the drive is behind that. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what Kratos and Atreus think they're accomplishing.
right.
And that's not to disparage like someone's dying wish necessarily, but like,
No,
but
but
it all seems like so much for so little.
it is, and it is pretty silly the way that they've done all this to get here, and then this random guy who's stuck to a tree is just like, nope, sorry, wrong mountain. And then
Yeah.
they accept that
And
and
they,
say like, okay, I guess we have to go on a second quest now.
yeah, and they don't even really question it. They're just like, all right, well, I guess we got to go do this now.
Yeah, it's just I don't think it's delivered super well. Like,
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I think for me to believe it more, I would have to know why she wants that. Like, you do learn it at the end of the game.
yeah,
But I think it would have helped me during the game to know why she wants that specific mountain.
right. It would have even made,
Or at least to know that there is a reason.
yeah, to know that the characters believe that there's a reason, right?
Yes.
So like, all it would have taken was like Kratos saying like, no, that can't be what she meant, and Atreus to say like, no, actually, she was very specific. She told me that this was super important, that like
Right.
it needed to be the highest peak in all the realms.
Yeah. Because as it stands, it just felt like they were doing it because that's what she said, and they didn't really think of why or was it worth it or anything like that.
Yeah.
They
So
were just going along.
if there was some sense that they thought it was meaningful to continue, then I would have felt better about it. But at the time, I was just like, I was just staring at my TV, like sat the controller down and was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
It's not because I didn't want to play the game anymore or anything like that. Like, it's not like that just ruined everything for me. It just felt so flat.
Yeah, they really didn't do a good job at contextualizing why they're going on this journey.
Right.
And like, yeah, you're ostensibly spending this whole game going through like insanely difficult ordeals to bury someone, and you have no idea why.
Yeah. And now, like, knowing how that game ends, like, I'm okay with it. Especially within the context of like, oh, this is all mythology, right? Like, things happen in specific ways because that's the way they happen, and like, there's no coincidence. It's all fate or preordained or whatever,
divined by the gods and all that.
Right. So like, you can accept some of that stuff once you are like, yes, this is mythology. That's fine. But in the moment, they did not sell that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
anyway, you cut off Amir's head, which is a great moment of like, you're asking him how to get to Jotunheim, where the highest peak actually is, and
you need his eye, as we were talking about earlier. You need people's eyes.
Yeah, there's some little like back and forth about how you're gonna do it, and then he's just like very like stoically like, well, I guess you're gonna have to cut off my head.
Yeah. Yeah, his delivery of that line was great.
Yeah.
Because he's attached to this tree and he needs to come with you. I'm pretty sure it was for his eye because he has the sight.
Yeah, he has the sight, and he also can speak to giants.
Yeah, and he's like, well, I'm not
really useful.
Yeah. Which I don't know how a head can speak because you don't have lungs, but anyway.
Magic.
Uh-huh. So yeah, you cut off his head and you take him with you, and Mimir is with you the rest of the game.
Yeah, and he's such a good like third wheel on their adventure.
Yeah,
who just like wants to tell you all the stories about the world.
Yeah, because I mean he's now just a head that Kratos hooks to his belt.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has all of this knowledge and this lore knowledge, and because Kratos is not interested in talking, Atreus and Mimir have a lot of dialogue back and forth where Atreus finally has an outlet where he can ask questions and they will be answered.
Yeah, definitely. And he gets a good storyteller too.
He is, yeah. I like listening to Mimir.
Yeah.
And Mimir can also speak the language that the world serpent speaks.
Right.
So you take him back to the world serpent and they have some fun conversations.
Yeah, which when he talks, because like the world serpent, like you said earlier, is like these big booming like
yeah,
and then Mimir just kind of yells back at him in the same sort of sentences, but without any of the like divine presence of the world. So he just kind of
it just sounds really goofy, like as if you or I did it.
Yeah, exactly. which is pretty good.
Yeah, Mimir is great. In some ways, I mean, Atreus is clearly the real heart of this game.
Yeah, yeah.
But in some ways, Mimir is like kind of the thing that, or the character that like makes it easy to just go through this game and like, I don't know what the right word is for it. Like,
well, he's just always got something interesting that he's wants to tell you about.
Yeah, he's like the one that kind of pulls you through and like makes it just enjoyable to go through, I guess.
Yeah. Whether you're just wandering around doing side quests or going through the main story, like he's just talking, and most of the stuff he's talking about is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from there, I forget the specific order of events. I think next is when you go after you bring Mimir to Freya to revive him.
Yeah.
And they clearly do not have a good history together.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. But I think that's when you go to the fallen giant Thalmor?
Thalmor, yeah, that sounds right.
There's just this huge giant that's dead, like in this frozen area.
Yeah.
And you need a piece of his chisel, the magic chisel or something.
Yep. Another MacGuffin.
Yep. But you go find the MacGuffin, and I don't remember the details of that, and we probably don't need to get into it. Right. Oh, is that when you fight the dragon? At some point, you fight a dragon, and that's when Atreus is like, "Can we kill something that big?" And they have that kind of cheeky line.
Yeah, I forgot about the dragon fight. That's a pretty good like God of War moment for this game. That it doesn't have a ton of those where like, this is a really big like, well designed fight.
Because really the only boss
and spectacle and all that good stuff.
Yeah, because really the only bosses in the game were you fight Baldur the 2 times, you fight Magni and Modi, which we'll get to, and you fight this dragon. Are there any bosses outside of those?
I mean, they're like what you could consider mini bosses, like different trolls and the ancients and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean bosses on the level of like the dragon.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, the dragon. This dragon, you're right, definitely felt. I think even more so than like Baldur, felt like the most like traditional God of War spectacle boss fight. Yeah,
because it doesn't really like matter to the story. It's just like and a dragon.
Yep, and we're gonna fight it. That was a good fight. I like that fight a lot.
Yeah, I did too.
That might even be my favorite fight in the game. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's probably that or the initial Baldur fight for me.
Yeah, I think mechanically I like the dragon better.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But yeah, you fight that. You get new ability for Atreus. Blah blah blah. But soon and that's when you get the chisel. They'll let you go through that door, those doors. And I forget exactly where in here, but somewhere around here is I think when Atreus gets sick.
Oh yeah.
Which is a big turning point in the story, and actually probably my favorite story sequence.
Yeah,
like. The whole resolute, because this is what triggers. I think the reason Atreus gets sick is really dumb.
Yeah, I was about to say I would like it better if I felt like it was the like initial him getting sick wasn't so corny.
Yeah, I wish there was a better reason for him getting sick, but
he gets sick because he's angry. Basically,
I thought he got sick because he didn't know he was a god.
Well, it's the combination of those, like.
Okay.
He loses control of himself through anger, which like is clearly intended to be like, this was passed down from Kratos, that he has this rage inside him that he can't control.
And they'd already had a few moments earlier in the game where like the first time you killed one of those trolls or whatever, he's like wailing on him, and Kratos is like, "Don't lose control" or something like that.
Right. But then, in addition to that, if he loses control, then he like has this internal conflict because he's a god and he has all this power, but he doesn't realize it.
Yeah. So apparently if you're a god and you don't know you're a god, like that causes problems.
Right.
And like that's just really dumb.
Yeah, it's kind of silly.
I can't even really think of a way to like explain that. Like it's just dumb.
Yeah.
But I think the story sequence that kicks off is really good.
Right.
Because you bring like, first of all, it's the first time you really see that Kratos does care about Atreus, because he's like
he kind of flips out.
Yeah, he kind of freaks out and he's like, I don't know what to do about this, and he rushes Atreus to Freya. And Freya tells him he needs to go to Helheim
Right.
to get this is also a very God of War thing, is he has to go there to get the heart of the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Which means you go there and fight this giant gatekeeper frost trolley giant guy and rip his heart out.
Yep. In a very grotesque scene when you kill him and take his heart. Like, they don't skip over it. It's not like you just kill him and then it's like he reaches down and stands up and there's a heart in his hand. Like, you gotta get in there. Yeah, no, you really, and there's probably some mini game, I forget, but yeah, I think you have to like mash circle some in there, stuff like that. He just, it's a really grisly thing, but they're also clearly showing like, hey, this is like Kratos is going to do this for Atreus, right? And you also get a really odd, like, borderline throwaway encounter with Zeus, right? Like, so this is Helheim. This is the Norse version of Hell. And Zeus is there because because you killed him in God of War 3. Yeah. And I don't even remember what he says, but it's just a couple sentences, like the very brief thing. He basically, like, his face pops up in the clouds off in the distance, and he's like, Kratos, you suck. And then you move on. Pretty much. That's really all it was. It was just like this throwback of like, hey, I'm here, you jerk, you killed me. I still hate you. It was really weird. But the moment of, so before you do go to Helheim, and when Freya is telling you about this stuff, she says your axe won't work because your Leviathan axe is a frost axe and everything, and Helheim's too cold or whatever. Yeah, so I guess in Norse mythology, instead of like Greek Hades or whatever, it's not like a realm of fire, it's all frozen. Yeah. So you need something that's not an ice axe. Yep. So Kratos goes home and he digs under the floorboards and pulls out his old Blades of Chaos. Yeah. From the original game. Yeah. Which, did you see that coming before, before you talked to Freya or not? Well, I told you the spoiler. I got. Oh yeah. Before I knew that the Blades of Chaos were in the game, I could have probably guessed. If somebody had asked me, "Are the Blades of Chaos going to be in this game?" I would have been like, "Yeah, maybe, probably." But I got it in the first few hours of the game. A tooltip on the loading screen. Yeah, that said something about when you use the Blades of Chaos, this ability or something or another. Yeah, that's really terrible. Kind of like. To be spoiled by a tooltip about it was really weird. Because usually I don't pay a ton of attention to those. Me either. Yeah, and in this game you can like advance to the next one or whatever, and so like occasionally I would read them. Occasionally I would just like mash R1 to like circle through them while I was waiting for it to load because I was bored. And then I saw that, and then I think it like immediately loaded. Right after I read it, and I was like, "Did I read that right?" Yeah, I'm pretty sure that said the Blades of Chaos. Yeah. I went through, up until this point, I pretty much went through thinking the Blades probably weren't going to be in there. Right. I figured something was up I figured something was going to change because, like. I didn't even feel like I was halfway through the game, and I basically had fully, the Leviathan axe was basically fully upgraded. I had basically fully unlocked everything in the skill trees. So it didn't seem like there was much progression left. And I'm like, how am I only halfway through the game and have everything unlocked? And then, of course, you get the blades, and then it unlocks a whole bunch of new upgrades. Yeah. But once she said you needed a different weapon, I knew exactly where that was going. Yeah. I think they foreshadow it pretty hard. Like he looks down at his wrists and things like that. Yeah. But I did think the moment of going back and getting them was cool. Yeah. And then you get in your boat and you get this long cutscene of him just like sitting silently in the boat as it's going back home, and Athena appears and talks to you for a minute. Yeah. It was a good scene. Yeah, I thought that was a really nice moment, and I think some of the throwbacks, like the Zeus face appearing, like I thought some of that stuff was wholly unearned. Yeah.
But but I thought the moment of going back to get your blades was a good moment because Kratos is very clearly this entire game trying to leave his past behind.
Yeah, definitely.
And I thought this was a good moment of him like really having to reconcile with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the blades, and I almost thought they were more fun than the axe.
Yeah, I like the blades pretty well.
I kind of like using those. So from this point, the rest of the game, you can toggle back and forth between the axe or the blades in combat. Right. And I kind of like using the blades better.
Yeah, I think there's an easy argument for either one, just depending on what you prefer. Yeah. Like, they're both good. They're different.
Yeah, I still like throwing the axe, but like if I'm doing melee combat, I pretty much wanted to be using the blades.
Yeah. The thing that the blades were really nice for was just that, like, the axe is very small, like, hitbox in front of you, whereas the blades, just like in the other old God of Wars, he's just like spinning all around and those things are flying everywhere. Yeah, so you do get like good crowd control and good reach with those blades, and that's what I liked. Is you didn't have to get like right up in something like the axe is good if you want like one-on-one close range, but like if you're like trying to deal with a crowd or like want to have a little bit of extra reach, like the blades all day. Yeah. Did you like having both weapons? I did, and I did switch between them every now and then. Like, and sometimes they force it because sometimes they'll give you enemies that are basically immune to one or the other. Yeah, they do that, and I think that's smart. Yeah, probably. But yeah, I thought it works a lot better in this game than previous like optional weapons in other God of War games. True, yeah, because they did. You're right. They did experiment and give a lot of new weapons in some. I think especially 3. Yeah. And I would always use the blades. Yeah, there were always some other weapons that you could switch to, but it was just always like, well, the blades are just better. Yeah, the blades are just good. So they did a good job in this one of making them both feel good in different ways, and then forcing you to switch between them sometimes. Yeah, and I like how they still had the axe as like the primary. So that wind's power we were talking about before, you had to use the you have to use the blade. It only works with the blades, right? But I still think primarily the axe was your primary environment puzzle solving. Definitely, yeah. So I like how that kind of stayed the primary weapon. So do you think the inevitable sequel to this game you'll still have both weapons? I think that's likely enough, I guess. Although he does take them off at the end, right? I don't know. Yeah, I could see him going either way. Yeah. Yeah, I actually don't remember that detail what he did with them at the end. I think he takes them off at the end, but then like since they want you to be able to keep playing, you just like pops back on. Yeah. after the end cutscene. Yeah. Okay. Great. We get the blades, we get that scene, and then we go through Helheim, which is pretty good sequence, I would say. It's definitely a lot better than Alfheim. Yeah. And it was pretty brisk. Yeah. And then you get back, you give Freya that heart. Mm-hmm. You cure your son. And pretty shortly, and I don't think it's right then, but pretty soon after, and I would kind of including this in this sequence and why I like it is he has the talk of where he explains that they're both gods. Right. So I'm glad they didn't I know it wasn't immediately, but I feel like it was pretty soon after. It was pretty quick, yeah. Yeah, it was pretty quick. And I like that they just didn't dwell on okay, why isn't Kratos having this talk yet? We know he's going to have it. Yeah. I like that after that point, they didn't just wait too long. Mm-hmm. And then that led to kind of a turn for Atreus. Yeah. Kind of a hard pivot from agreeing with his dad that gods suck to I'm a god now. I'm better than everybody. Yeah. Yeah, he just had, which to me was actually kind of unbelievable of it. It seemed... It was a little much.
Yeah, it seemed very out of character for Atreus to have like that sharp of a turn that quickly for being like the super sweet, like caring, like benevolent little boy to just being that a total like jerk punk.
Yeah.
Who just like thinks he's better than everyone because he knows he's a god now.
Yeah, he totally has his like teenager moment of like everybody else sucks but me. I'm the only one who's good.
Yeah. And even Kratos is just like, what are you?
Yeah, like Kratos and Mimir have a couple of like reactions that are really good. Like,
yeah, they really do.
Mimir
Yeah,
at one point is just like, are we gonna let that slide? Like,
yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty good reaction to that stuff. And Atreus like even stops helping you out in combat. Like he'll stop listening.
Yeah.
Like during this period, you can like tell him to shoot and he won't listen.
He'll say whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, his personality like just completely changes.
Yeah. But that doesn't last super long.
No, it doesn't. It's only for the segment because that's when you go like down that big elevator into Tyr's area.
Yeah.
Which you learn about Tyr, at least in this game's mythology, I believe, is the Norse god of war.
Yeah, it's like they kind of talk about him like he's the god of war, but also like justice and like some other more noble pursuits.
Yeah, I feel like they were really trying to portray him as like the antithesis of Kratos.
Right. Like, yes, he's a god that rules over conflict and war, but he uses his position there to try to end wars instead of start them.
Right. Whereas Kratos, and I guess also Ares before him, like were very warmongering.
Right.
And Tyr is very clearly not that.
So yeah, I liked that a lot.
Yeah.
I liked a lot of the run up to the end game here is learning about Tyr and his adventures and everything he stood for, and I think that like sets up a cool dynamic for like how Kratos feels about his own godhood.
Yeah. Because Kratos, I don't know if regret is exactly the right word, but he very clearly does not feel proud of what he's done.
Definitely not. I think regret works. I think he.
Yeah, I mean, I think he believed. The reason why I question the word regret is because I think he still believes that all those gods were bad and maybe needed to die.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't think he takes any pleasure in having had done that.
Right. I think he probably believes that like his in the moment decision making at every point for the most part was just, but like the overall result of his life has been bad.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right. And I feel like some other character, I don't know if it was Mimir or someone else, made some comment of like, oh yeah, all those Greek gods were just total pricks and they deserved it.
Yeah.
I forget who, but someone's had a comment along those lines. Yeah, but yeah, so like, yeah, this whole segment with Tyr like really has a lot of Kratos like reflecting on that. And that is he does not feel, like his life has been a net positive, I guess, like you said.
No, definitely.
And he also clearly wants to start over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when he sees Atreus like being his teenage punk mode,
that doesn't sit well.
No, Kratos is not like that, and he gives him a stern talking to at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and all of that kind of builds with the encounters with Magni and Modi.
Yeah.
So you finally fight them, which I thought the fight with both of them was actually kind of neat.
Yeah, the fight was fun because there was just like a 2v2 fight, and they would like occasionally put you in like a cinematic pose with Kratos and Atreus back to back, like spinning around in like the magical storm that Magni and Modi created as they're like flinging themselves at you out of the darkness.
Yeah,
I thought all that was kind of neat, well presented.
Yeah, definitely. And you
just murder.
Yeah, you kill one of them. I forget which one because I get them mixed up.
Yeah, I think it might have been Magni, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, and you kill one of them, and the other runs away.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up and then he comes back a little later, and he's like really beat up.
Yeah.
And he's basically like, he ran back to, I guess, Thor, his dad.
I think that's right. I think he went back to Thor.
Yeah. And he basically beat him up. It's like his dad beat him up.
His dad beat him up for letting his brother die.
Yeah, and being incompetent.
Yeah.
And he's just like very clearly like just like he's done. He's broken.
Yeah.
And
then
Atreus, yeah. Go ahead.
Just murders him.
Yeah, in cold blood.
Stabs him and kicks him off a ledge.
Yeah, and then just like super cold.
Yeah.
And then Kratos gives him another stern talking to of like, we only kill if there's a reason. Like we don't just do it willy-nilly.
Right.
And there's a lot of good character development during like this stretch between Kratos and Atreus.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, and I when I said when Atreus got sick that this kicked off like one of my favorite story arcs, it was that arc of Kratos remembering his past and like finally revealing that to Atreus, and like the turn that made Atreus go through. Like I feel like from that moment is when like the story like actually started going through turns at a good clip.
Yeah, things start happening during that segment. You feel like you're building towards like more interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree. I like that.
Yeah. And after you kill the second brother, you have to go to Helheim for something again. I forget what. Oh no, you get back to the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
And Baldur like jumps you.
Yeah.
And you destroy the portal or whatever. And you like, I don't know if you just fell down to Helheim or what, but you somehow get back to Helheim.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's like this whole sequence starting at the top of the mountain where like you end up getting flung off the mountain, or he kidnaps Atreus and is like flying away on a dragon.
Yeah.
And you like jump on the dragon. And you have
right. Yeah, this was basically like a whole big quick time sequence.
Yeah. And then the dragon crashes or was that later? Am I getting confused?
No, I think this is right. Yeah, because like, he grabs Atreus, Baldur grabs Atreus, like jumps off the mountain. Kratos like just instinctively follows and jumps off after, even though he was like really wounded.
Yeah.
And like there's this whole scene where you're like fighting Baldur on the back of that dragon.
Yeah.
And I forget what happened.
They end up in the realm travel room, and Baldur's trying to take you back to Asgard so that the forces of Asgard will come and get you.
Right.
And then Kratos like kicks the machine or something, and it sends you to hell instead.
Yeah, that's right. You were like fighting on top of that machine.
Yeah.
This
it's a pretty ridiculous sequence.
And
overall.
Pretty lengthy too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of goes. Which is why I don't remember how this all happened, because like you're playing part of it, so you're kind of focused on like, hitting your prompts.
Yeah.
And you just kind of like traverse this huge area really quickly. Yeah, and you end up back in Helheim.
So that was all pretty cool, and then you kind of have to crawl your way back out of hell.
Yeah. And this is where Atreus has his turn back, is because you see these images of like of yourselves, and Atreus basically sees how terrible he's been acting.
Yeah.
And he's like, was that me? And Kratos and Mimir are basically just like, yep, you were being a dick.
Yeah. Like, get over this kid. Like,
yeah.
And then he, I mean, almost as quickly as he turned into a teenage jerk, he kind of just turns back and is like, okay, I'm good now.
Yeah, I think those switches were a little unbelievable, but
they're a little abrupt.
Yeah, but I mean, I get the purpose of it.
Yeah, but it is just sort of weird within this game where everything is kind of like foreshadowed and like slow turns and takes forever to get from A to B. Like those things, like huge emotional turns happening on a dime, it just feels off.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is so much of this game moves so slowly
Yeah.
that the things that move quickly without explanation just feel really off.
Right.
I feel like there is a better pacing and editing of this game where a lot of it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
The other key thing you learn while you're down in Helheim is you see Balder
Yeah.
watching some past images of himself and his mom Freya, which
Right.
I don't think you know that they're related until that moment.
I can't remember when you find that out, but regardless, it's still an important reveal at this point that they do not get along, and
Yep.
Balder wants to kill her because she is the reason he cannot feel anything.
Yeah, she imbued him with the gift of invulnerability and unable to feel and all that, thinking she was protecting him, but he thinks it's more of a curse because he wants to be able to feel and he wants to live a normal life and not just he feels like his life has no meaning now because he can't feel anything.
Right.
So he resents her for it and wants to kill her.
Yep.
And you climb your way back out by doing some weird boat flying magic.
That boat scene was kind of crazy.
It was kind of absurd. You just fly your way out of Helheim.
Yeah.
By using fires on the boat.
Yeah.
Itself. It's like you light a fire on a boat under the sail to make it fly.
Right. And then there's just swarms of enemies just dropping on the boat constantly.
Yeah.
It definitely felt like a late game God of War encounter.
Yeah.
Where they were just we're just going to turn everything up to 11. Yeah. There's some really contrived device here. And then it made me think of I don't know if you would remember the specific fight from God of War 1, but near the end of that game, there's this one encounter where it's just conveyor belts and spikes and just a million enemies on screen, and it's the most absurd thing ever.
Yeah,
this
that is
this felt this game's version to that.
Yeah, that was one of the most memorable encounters in the first God of War because you're and I feel that's something this game didn't do enough of was just
not really
because God of Wars 1 and 2 in particular had a whole lot of you need to be doing something in the environment.
Right.
While there's something you need to accomplish and enemies just keep swarming you.
Yeah.
And it's whether you're pulling a switch to make something move and as you're fighting enemies, it's reverting back. So you're constantly under this time pressure.
Uh-huh.
And this was the one moment in this game that felt like that.
Yeah.
Because the enemies were trying to put out the fires on the boat.
So I've seen some reactions around the wider internet of people hating on that encounter.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked it because it gave me that style of combat encounter that we didn't get much of.
Yeah. Because I feel and I think in addition to what we were saying earlier about the dodging and stuff feeling tighter in the original games, I think the encounter design I also just liked better in the original games because they were more dynamic and made you consider the environment and stuff more and other things to interact with. Because most of the encounters in this game I felt were just all right, this is a standalone encounter where you are going to fight these enemies and that's that.
Yeah, the main way they mix up encounters in this game is just different variations together. Different types of enemies together.
And there were some good variety of enemies. There were different things to engage with, but they didn't use the environment much in the encounters.
For sure. I feel like we could have had some more unique feeling scenarios built around an encounter.
Definitely. And I think the boat was a good
moment. I like the boat scene because of that.
Yeah. I don't need every encounter to be that, but
right.
I think it's important to have some in there like that. Because it made me you had to think differently. You had to fight differently.
Right. It's less about I need to keep myself from taking damage and whittle down enemies. It's more about crowd control and how do I dispatch this enemy very quickly so that I can then move back to the other side of the boat.
There was a whole lot of throwing my axe across the entire boat.
Yeah.
So that was a good encounter.
But then from there, I feel it's kind of a couple more very minor MacGuffins to get to the end.
Yeah, I don't remember because I did I did this last chunk in basically one sitting. So
Yeah.
like
There's
a
like
lot
a
of
section in Tyr's temple where there's like traps and stuff.
right.
I think that's after this
I don't
point.
remember. That might have been before. I don't know.
It might have been before. Those
I
two things were next to each other, though. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was all around that area.
And then there's, I guess you have to get Mimir's other eye as the last thing you get.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think I'm missing anything important there.
Oh, you had to flip the temple.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I was saying like Tyr's temple thing with all the traps.
You're right. Yep, you're totally right.
Which wasn't super important from like a story standpoint.
No.
It was just like,
it was like you said, more MacGuffins to get.
Here's one more like combat / puzzle solving area to go through.
Yeah,
which was fine.
Yeah, it was fine.
I didn't dislike it.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like basically after that second Helheim visit, story-wise, it's basically the end of the game at that point.
Yeah. So
you go get a MacGuffin, and then you're gonna go to Jotunheim, which is where the highest peak in all the realms is.
Yeah.
And you have your final showdown with Baldur.
Yep.
And Freya is there somehow.
Yeah, she's just there.
She's just there. And really, Baldur is trying to kill Freya.
Yeah.
Like, Baldur kind of has no beef with you.
Yeah, I forget or maybe they don't even make it clear, but like, presumably he came there to stop you because he's been chasing you this whole game. I
forget why I think this now that I'm thinking about it again, but I believe at the beginning of the game he was actually looking for Faye for some reason. And so like when he was at your house at the start and he was like, what are you hiding in there? Like I believe for some reason he was looking for Faye because he knew Faye was a giant.
Yeah.
And like I feel like that's why he was hounding you.
Right.
And then eventually along the way he learned you were also a god. I don't think he knew that initially.
Right.
But once he knew that, he probably knew that after your first fight with him.
Yeah, it's probably pretty clear then.
Yeah. But once he knew that, then he had more reasons to be on your case.
Right. But then, yeah, in this final encounter, as soon as Freya shows up, he's just like, oh, I don't care about you guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to get her.
Yeah. Like his main goal is to kill her.
Yeah.
And Kratos wants to protect Freya.
Right.
Which is a little, I feel like the explanation for some of this stuff didn't quite sell itself on me.
Yeah.
But I mean, I get what they were going for is that, Kratos is still haunted by his actions of killing gods, including his parent.
Right. His
dad, Zeus, and he doesn't want to see the same things repeated here, being Baldur killing his mother.
Yeah, I mean, like when Baldur is going to go after Freya, he steps in front of Freya and is like, I walked this path. This is not the way. You will not feel better after this.
Yeah, like this is very clearly he's seeing himself in Baldur. Which there are a lot of parallels. Like there
are.
Like they both felt like the other gods kind of slighted them.
Mm-hmm. And especially their parents.
Yep, especially their parents.
So yeah, he tries to step in the way. Freya's like, no, this isn't your problem.
Yeah. Freya wants her to stay out of it. And Freya also, so like, Kratos wanted to kill his dad, Zeus, but Zeus did not want to be killed, and Zeus was fighting back.
Right.
Freya took the other turn of she was just going to let Baldur kill her.
Yeah, which I think is a little weird.
I think so too.
That she's just like, basically just stands there and lets him almost choke her to death.
Yeah, and she would have had Kratos not intervened.
Yeah, and is like mad at Kratos for intervening.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Yeah, it is weird. It's like, I don't know. And this is where, so one of my big struggles with the story in this game, and I kind of alluded to this earlier when we were talking about why would they follow Faye's dying wish like that strictly, like to the law? And there's a whole undercurrent in this game thematically of family above all else.
Right.
And maybe it's because, I don't have kids, like maybe if I did, I'd fully understand, but Freya doesn't want it. It basically comes down to like either she realizes Baldur is not going to stop until she's dead.
Right.
Or obviously if Baldur dies, like basically Baldur is going to try and kill her as long as they're both alive.
Right.
And Baldur is obviously the one being unreasonable here because Freya even reverses the spell. Like she makes it where he can feel again.
Yeah.
Which is what allows him to be killed because before then he couldn't die.
Right.
So like, she tries to atone for it and Baldur's being completely unreasonable and not willing to forgive. And like she would rather die herself than see him die, even though he's clearly the one in the wrong.
Yeah.
And like there's that whatever paternal instinct where it's like, I don't care if this makes sense. I don't care if my son is being a complete monster. I would still rather die before him. And like, I think that in my brain, like, I don't follow that logic. Like I totally see wanting to protect your children, but when they're being that much of a jerk and that much in the wrong, like I would think you would still be willing to let them go.
Well, yeah. And I think another problem with it is that doesn't even have to be the choice here. Like,
right.
It's not that if she like gets away and goes back to her hidey hole under the giant turtle that means Baldur has to die.
Right. Well, I think I got the impression that in her mind she thought Baldur would never stop hunting her.
Yeah, I guess so, but yeah, I don't know.
So like it was never going to end until one of them died.
Yeah. I didn't feel like it had to be a me versus you, like one of us has to die kind of moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like, why was she even there? Like, she just
yeah. It was like now thinking about it, like, why was she there? Like, how did she get there? Why did she show up? Like, I don't know.
I liked Freya as a character up until this final.
Yeah, I really stopped. Yeah, she was actually one of my favorite characters in the game until this point. Like, I thought she was one of the most level-headed, like, strongest, sensible people in the game. Right. Until that moment. And then I thought she started making a lot of choices that just kind of didn't make sense.
Right. Like, just the fact that she was there at all didn't make sense. And then, like, she's just willing to let this guy kill her in, like, a blind rage. And then...
That's what she wanted to have happen.
Yeah, it seems like that was her goal.
Yeah.
And then when Kratos steps in, she, like... starts whipping out all kinds of weird magic.
Yeah, she goes nuts.
And like revives the giant Thalmor that it was laying in the snowy field.
You end up fighting Baldur while Freya is basically intervening constantly, trying to prevent you from killing each other.
Yeah.
So she's doing a whole lot of magic and a whole lot of like she revives that giant and has him interfere and all this stuff. Like, did you like
constantly like pulling up like thorns around each of you to like tie you down to keep you from fighting.
Yeah. So did you like that fight overall?
I liked the idea of it, but I think I was so put off by like her position in this fight. Like, she's clearly very powerful and like does not want her son to die. And like, I feel like if she had just not come to this location, then it would have been fine.
Right.
Like, I guess Atreus and Kratos probably would have killed Baldur anyway. They would have found a way to do it.
Yeah.
I think they at this point knew his weakness.
Right.
So I guess maybe you could say like she saw that writing on the wall and like came to try to stop them.
Right.
But
yeah, maybe.
I don't know why she thought letting him just kill her would stop Kratos and Atreus from then killing Baldur.
Yeah, that's the other thing is like
I didn't get the impression that anything she was going to do here short of just killing Kratos and Atreus was going to stop Baldur from being killed.
Yeah. And like In some ways, Kratos doesn't really have a reason to interfere there or to kill Baldur.
No, he doesn't.
But Baldur kept hounding him. So
Yeah.
like, unless Baldur killed Freya and then completely left Kratos alone until the end of time, like one of them was going to kill each other.
Right.
Because that seems to be what gods do in this universe. Yeah, a lot of the way that ending wrapped up did not sit well with me either.
Yeah.
The fight itself was okay. Like it was one of those spectacle fights as well.
Yeah, it was fine from the standpoint of like it being a boss fight and being this big bombastic thing at the end of the game, but like the wrapping around it I didn't care for.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But then the stuff after that I found pretty interesting.
Yeah. And I guess just to wrap up that, you do end up killing Baldur.
Yeah.
And then Freya basically is like, you're going to regret this.
Yeah, she's clearly going to become a villain in the sequels to this game.
Yes.
She does not like that you killed Baldur at all.
Part of me wonders, because at first I thought, this is going to be a new trilogy. Like, this game was Baldur, next game will be Thor, and the next one will be Odin or something like that.
Right.
But now I'm almost wondering if she might end up becoming the primary antagonist through the whole trilogy.
It could be. I mean, she's clearly going to be out for revenge.
Yeah. So it could be the end of God of War 3, as I guess what they'd call this.
I guess.
which now that I say that out loud sounds really weird.
Yeah.
Gosh, what are they going to call the sequels? Are they really just going to call them God of War 2 and 3?
I would rather them just give them subtitles.
That's what I hope.
Like, the next one should be God of War Ragnarok, right?
Yeah. Or they can put a 2 on it and also give a subtitle, I guess. I don't know.
I guess.
Yeah, I would rather have just the subtitle.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. I wish this one would have had a subtitle too, actually.
Yeah, this one having a subtitle would have been nice.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this, like, just calling it the same, like,
yeah.
Between like Tomb Raider and Doom and this, like I'm not a fan of the reboots with the exact same names.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a side note.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, she does her turn. Yeah, and from there you actually do make it to Jotun.
Yep.
And that's where you finally learn some things about Faye.
Yeah, you finally learn about Faye very nicely. Like, you go to Jotunheim and they make it like a big deal. They like leave Mimir behind so that they can have a father-son moment.
Yeah,
and
I thought that was a whole really nice segment.
Yeah, and there's like no combat there. It's just like, okay, here we're gonna like do our falling action, like wrap things up and show you a little bit more behind the curtain stuff.
Yeah.
I liked all of that stuff a lot.
Yeah, and you learn she was a giant, and you kind of, I guess you get kind of some of her history or whatever.
Yeah.
I forget. So, like, I mean, you basically learn that she wanted you to go there so you could see that stuff.
Right. So there are all these murals and stuff on the walls at this summit, depicting the giants and her, and there's probably some stuff about Tyr in there. I don't remember.
Probably he had a good relationship with the giants.
Yeah, and just their people and what they did and what they wanted and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And you also see that all the giants are dead.
All the giants are dead, and then there's some weird mural that you get like a flash of just as they're going out to the summit that shows Kratos and Atreus.
Yeah, so you see a bunch of murals that basically show what Kratos' and Atreus' journey.
Yeah, it shows their journey.
And Atreus or someone makes some comment of like, oh, hey, this is what we did. How would they have known? So it's like, It's almost like Faye or whoever of the giants made those murals, like foresaw what was going to happen.
Right.
And made murals of it. And then you see that one mural that I believe it's portraying Kratos is dead.
I think so.
It looks like it's Kratos dead and like Atreus holding his head in his lap.
Yeah.
Like Kratos is like lying down and his head's in Atreus's lap.
Right.
That's what it appears to be, and Atreus does not see that one. Only Kratos sees that one.
Yeah, and there's like something else weird on that mural. I'll have to look it up again. But there's like some other figure or some like magical effect like portrayed there.
Yeah.
At the time I was like, oh, this looks weird. So yeah, there's definitely like some foreshadowing of the future there.
Yeah, which also clashes with another one of the themes, because Kratos has said, like in his talks with Atreus multiple times throughout the game, that we can choose who we want to be. We can make our choices. And you see a lot of, gods killing or people killing their parents.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how many of the side quests you did, but in one of the, all the Fafnir's stuff, which I think some of which was tied into the main story.
Yeah, I did a little bit of that.
But if you follow up on the side quests of that as well, like it was someone killed their dad and tried to take the treasure and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then of course you see that in the main character as well, like Kratos killed his dad and Baldur was trying to kill their parents and all this other stuff. And you see Thor beat up one of his sons. Like you see a lot of like families being terrible to each other.
Yep.
And there's a whole lot of, and I remember this line specifically is, not the exact wording, but it was very much along the lines of Atreus saying something like, is this what God, like, is this always how it is that people kill their parents or whatever?
Right. Yeah.
And Kratos follows it up with like, no, we can be better. We can choose, we can make our own choices and do better. And then you get to that mural at the end and it shows that all of this was foreshadowed anyway. And then you start thinking, well, did they actually have choice in this or not?
I mean, that's a whole thing, right? Like determinism or fatalism.
Yeah. And I think that in that last moment ends up kind of being one of the main themes of the game.
Yeah.
And also, is it foreshadowing that Atreus may kill Kratos?
It could be.
I think it's posing that question as well.
Yeah.
Is it going to continue that cycle?
Right.
So that's a question for a future game, I suppose.
Yeah. But then there's also the theme of like the giants waiting for the gods to become good. They use that terminology a few times.
Gotcha.
And so like I think in those murals a lot of it is depicted as like their journey is the journey of gods becoming good. So like I think it's maybe not that explicit. But there's definitely some like giant writings that talk about like waiting for the time when gods grow good and then like having all of their journey depicted that way as they like travel together. I think there's some insinuation that like they saw this relationship between Kratos and Atreus and their journey as a turning point for that cycle of violence.
Yeah.
Or a potential turning point maybe.
Yeah. So you could be right. For sure.
I think it's vague enough that you could go a bunch of ways.
Yeah, I think it's intentionally left ambiguous as well.
Yeah.
That it could go, and does make me curious to see like what direction the sequels take it.
Right.
Because it could be that Kratos and Atreus are the good ones.
Right.
That do kind of break the cycle and show, because I mean, up until this point in every God of War game, including this one, like basically every god we've ever seen other than Atreus is like portrayed as bad.
Right.
Like even Freya, who seemed pretty good through most of the game, kind of makes her turn at the end.
Yeah.
Like there's always seems to be something that happens that just causes people to get pissed off. And,
right.
So I pulled up, while you were talking, I pulled up the mural that shows
the
dead Kratos, and there's actually something coming out of Atreus's mouth.
Okay.
And like going into Kratos.
Okay.
So, I mean, again, it's ambiguous. Like, is that something Atreus did to kill him? Is that something he's trying to do to save him? Like, I don't know. Like, it looks like some weird magical effect coming, like, going between those two characters.
Right.
And it's not clear one way or the other what it's meant to be.
Yeah. So I thought all that stuff was super interesting.
And that's probably the figure you were thinking of is.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that is all super. I'm still not exactly sure what, this is one of my main questions, is I'm still not exactly sure what Faye's intent for sending them there was. Like, I'm not sure like what specifically she wanted them to get out of that.
Yeah, I think some of that is yet to be seen. I think a lot of it is probably around this idea of like she knew who Kratos was and that like what gods are like generally and what their tendencies are and where they kind of end up in their rule as gods. And I do think that there's clearly some intentionality behind all of this in a way that makes me think that there's an attempt to like change something about the negative aspects of gods.
Right. Yeah, could be. So
then the other weird little stinger at the end is that the Atreus is half giant and half god, and also had a potential other name.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up.
So his mother, Faye, wanted to call him Loki.
Yep.
And Atreus tells him, or Kratos tells him why he named him Atreus. It's all his like Spartan legendary warrior and all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
But
yeah, he tells him a good story of Spartan warriors.
Yeah,
which I thought was actually really funny.
It was really actually a cool story that he told, and the way he told it was good. And then at the end, Atreus was like, "Wow, you actually told a good story."
Yeah, and it was a good story, and it was actually because, like, when you think back to the very beginning of the original God of War,
right?
Like Kratos wasn't a god yet. Like he was a Spartan soldier, and like there was a lot of Spartan theme and imagery and stuff. And
and his core like ethos about how to deal with problems is through like discipline and and practice and things like that, which are very military kinds of ideals.
Yeah, and over all of the craziness that happened from basically the end of that first game through the sequels and through this game, like you totally forget like
he was just a Spartan general.
Yeah. And like, I thought this was a really good way to like kind of remind us of that.
Yeah. So that was cool. And then they just kind of leave that Atreus is Loki.
Yeah.
They
so
kind of leave that hanging.
Yeah. So apparently I like in the thing I pulled up that showed that mural, they have a little bit of like talking about the ending, and apparently the death of Balder and Loki are important pieces in Norse mythology to the being like starting Ragnarok.
Right.
So if I know nothing about Norse mythology, but like Loki's participation in Ragnarok might have some significance that I'm just unaware of.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised. Actually, I would expect Ragnarok to play a role in the sequels.
Yeah. And they're very clear about that even after the scene wraps, that Ragnarok is starting.
Yeah. According to this thing I'm reading right now, the death of Balder is the first domino for Ragnarok. Like,
right.
The first thing that sets that in motion.
Okay.
So
yeah,
they're going down that road.
Yep.
And yeah, the final scene is you just kind of, as you were starting to say, you kind of just walk out of there and not much more fanfare after that. And then you get back to the world and you're like, hey, we can go explore more.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, really amusing aside that I thought throughout the whole game, because Kratos is very stoic and like, we have to do the mission. It's like, do everything for the mission. Atreus is always the one who like, hey, let's go explore.
Yeah, like, let's go look around and explore.
Yeah.
And help people.
Yeah. And I just have this image in my head of like the developers using Atreus to like try and justify why Kratos would actually go and explore around this world. Because,
totally. Yeah.
Like Kratos himself would never go do that stuff.
Yeah, he would not do any of it.
So it felt like them trying to justify this game format that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, which is really good. Like they do a good job of it.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
Yeah.
I still might have enjoyed it without all of that stuff, but
Yeah, I just mean in contextualizing it
sure, yeah,
in a way that
that's
makes
true.
sense.
Because most games wouldn't even try and address it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you do get back and you can go explore, of course. But
Yeah.
there's one final scene that if you go back to your house after
Right.
beating the game and go to sleep, it does this like 3 years later, like flash forward thing.
Yeah.
And Kratos and Atreus wake up in their house and there's like this big storm swirling outside.
Mm-hmm.
And basically you open the door and there's Thor just standing right in front of your house.
Standing there staring you down.
Yep, his hammer all glowing and
Yep.
like storm swirling around. And yeah, he just like basically looks at you and then it fades to black.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
my first read of that was like Thor's going to be the big bad in the next game, but
It could be.
I don't actually know, and doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I think at this point the clear plot points for sequels are Freya's going to be out for revenge, Thor is going to be after you as well, and Ragnarok is starting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to talk about in this game, actually.
There is a lot to talk about. We could probably talk even more about it.
I could. There's definitely a lot of the side stuff we could dig into. Like, there's even more story and lore stuff we could dig into.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably a pretty good run of like the most important stuff. Is there anything else you want to make sure we hit before we call this?
Probably not. I think just general thoughts overall, though.
Yeah.
I ended up definitely liking the game overall. I feel positive about it as an experience, but there are some like clear both like gameplay mechanical decisions with the leveling stuff and then like lulls in the like pacing of the game.
Yeah.
That like at times while I was playing it, I was like, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then coming out of the end, I think there's plenty of good stuff there, especially on the front of like character arcs and writing and like how they interweave all these different characters and all the mythology together. Mm-hmm. Like all that stuff worked really well for me.
Yeah. Do you think, I think this, and do you agree that the back half of the game is stronger than the first half?
Yeah, I think so.
Both mechanically and narratively?
Yeah, it's definitely better mechanically. I think it is. There's probably more in the back half that I enjoyed narratively as well. Although I think the very opening of the game is strong. That first Baldur fight is really strong.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, it is kind of slow for a while.
Yeah, because I remember probably halfway-ish through the main story, like, and you kind of alluded to this when you were just talking about your final thoughts of feeling like, do I even want to do this anymore?
Yeah.
Like, I definitely had a couple moments where I'm like, this just all feels like a slog, like not much is happening, like everything takes forever.
Yeah.
Like I definitely had a couple moments where I'm like, this is like 20 more hours of this. Like, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this.
Yeah, I think there was definitely some questioning throughout the game.
Yeah, but I think in the back half, especially as I stopped doing so much side stuff, and I think the story started moving. Like once Atreus got sick, like from that point on, I felt like the story actually moved at a pretty good clip. And I was curious to see what happened next, and that kind of pulled me through.
Yeah.
And it did get mechanically more interesting, especially right after Atreus got sick, is also when you got the blades. Which, as I mentioned, I kind of like that better in combat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, my final takeaways are pretty similar to yours. The game definitely could have been cleaned up a lot. I think I probably would have enjoyed it better if there was no side quests, no gear, no crafting. Mm-hmm. Like, I think I would probably enjoy this better if it was a 15-ish hour, like, paced similarly to the previous games, like going through, for the most part, a linear action game with a few upgrades and skill trees, because the old games did have that stuff.
They did.
So like I'm totally fine with that stuff, but I think like a more more in the realm of like a 15-ish hour game with better paced, edited down would have been more up my alley for what this game was going for. Because there's definitely filler and slow moments and all that, and as we said, like those gameplay systems were just not great.
Yep.
And I think some of the story moments, as we've talked about, like could have been handled better. Like the whole highest peak in all the realms business, and like Freya's turn, like there's like on the order of 3 or 4 story moments that I think just could have been handled better.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I really like the. I kind of didn't want to see Kratos come back at all. But I think, given we got a new God of War game starring Kratos, who is the same Kratos, like I think this is about as good of a like narrative and tonal reset as you could do.
Yeah, I agree.
And I really like seeing that, and I will almost certainly play the next games. Like I'm curious to see where this story goes. Like,
yep,
I liked it enough for that. And I mean, overall, I did like it. Like as we talked about, I like the combat, like, and I liked a lot of the story stuff we've been talking about. I just definitely wish some of it could have been cleaned up more. So it's a great game with rough edges.
Yeah, for sure.
But so I guess you and I are in the minority of not like just absolutely loving this game and thinking it's the best thing ever.
I guess so.
Because the reviews for this game were insane.
They were.
And I don't feel like I've heard many of those reviews like talk about the things that we didn't like about it.
Yeah, I think
which is kind of odd.
Yeah, I think the thing that surprised me most was the like leveling and stat system stuff, like with the universal praise it got. I'm so surprised that literally nobody else had the same reaction we had.
Yeah, maybe that just means people like that stuff. I don't know.
Guess.
Or I just don't know. But yeah, overall, I think it's a very good game. Not a perfect game, but a very good one. And curious to see what the sequels hold.
Yeah, me too.
God of War 2 in 2021.
Something like that.
I don't know when it'll come out. Who knows?
Yeah.
But all right. Well, if you have nothing more you wanna add in here, I think that might call it the show.
All right. I think we did it.
I think we did. We have officially spoiled God of War. This has been a special edition of ATACS. Adults Talk About Cool Stuff. I've been Flex, joined by Nate. We have thoroughly spoiled God of War. And we are signing off. See you next time, and thanks for listening.
Boy.